I just want to start by saying shukr for the opportunity to be here. I love being in places on the rise, and Sharjah is on the rise. But I'll also point out that being on the rise brings with it responsibility. Not just opportunity, but responsibility. Look up for a second. Our opportunity is to fill this space with ideas. Our responsibility is to fill this space with the future. So for the next 15 minutes or so, I'd like to give you some context for the way I think about building, creating, envisioning the future. And it has to do with redefining challenges. Naja pointed out no limitations. I look at that same concept in a different way, and that is, how do we define the challenges we're trying to solve? Now, most of us look at the world the way it is and say, how can we make small changes to make it better? That's a great exercise. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. We're talking about transforming paradigms. And so to set us up for an extraordinary panel, and I can't wait to be joined by our panelists to talk about the future of sustainability and innovation, not just in Sharjah or the Emirates, but around the world, I'm going to introduce a concept that we call proximity. It's a concept that articulates where every industry is going, the rest of our careers as a result of digital technologies. And when we have this concept, we can turn this into foresight about where the future will go. And I would love to ask you, each of you individually, what will be your role? What challenge will you pick up? Now, what do I mean by reframing challenges? So, about 5 years ago, I was speaking to the leadership team of one of the big bond rating agencies in the United States. Bond rating agencies take data and analyze it and then give ratings to bond offerings, to investors, to make investment decisions. Now, they had just set up a group of people to attack big challenges for the organization, and they gave them definitions of those challenges. Now, I love this model. Bring a small group of people together to attack a big challenge with a defined amount of time and a small budget. I love this approach. But here was one of their challenges that I challenged them about. They said, Professor, we have one offering, a very significant offering for our company, that from the time we sign the contract to the time we deliver to the client is 2 months. So we said to the team, get that to 2 weeks. Now I said, that's bold, that's exciting. 2 months to 2 weeks is a big deal. The problem with your challenge, though, is, what if someone else comes along in the near future who can do the same thing in 2 minutes? You will have now wasted an entire year of effort to go from 2 months to 2 weeks because someone else can do it in 2 minutes. And they realized I was right. Because when you do bond rating, what do? You take data and you analyze it. There's no scenario in the distant future where we will not be able to take data and analyze it with artificial intelligence in a fraction of a moment. And so they will have entirely wasted all of that effort. This is what I mean when I say we have to entirely reframe challenges. Now, this company you all know, I'm sure, Lightyear, will be joined by Tom later from the company. They've reframed the challenge. Many people say, well, to make electric vehicles happen, we need charging stations. We need infrastructure. Now that feels right, but it's actually completely wrong. What do I mean by this? Well, later this decade, in the next few years, an electric vehicle, will be able to get 1,000 kilometers on one charge. Now, we might not do that because of inductive charging or weight or efficiency, or that's a separate issue, but we will be able to have electric vehicles with 1,000 kilometers on one charge. Now, what does that do to the charging station infrastructure needs to make electric vehicles happen? Instead of worrying about the infrastructure, what Lightyear has done is reframe the challenge. How can we bring the energy exactly where it's needed, anywhere, all the time? And that's a reframing, and that's the kind of thing we need to be doing. Now, stepping back from all of this, about 6 years ago, I started asking, what are the common underlying dynamics that digital technologies drive in the economy, and is there some foresight we can develop as a result? Now, when I say digital, I mean all the things you would think of, like artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, but I also mean rooftop solar energy generation, which is digitally enabled. I also mean 3D printing, which wouldn't happen without digital. And when we look at all of these technologies, each in their own ways, they do one thing in common. They compress capabilities into smaller and smaller packages and allow us to distribute them all around the economy ever closer to each moment in time and space. And so because of the distributed capability of digital, this is the key point, digital technologies push the production and provision of value, products and services. Digital technologies push the production and provision of value ever closer to the moment of actual demand in time and space. Now note what I did not say is just better supply chain management. That's important, but that's not what I'm saying here. I'm actually saying the direction of all industries for the rest of our careers will increasingly be trending toward a case where we wait, we procrastinate until there's an actual customer ready to buy the product or service, and then the system, the technology platform, the infrastructure, whatever it is we've built, whirs to action and creates that value coterminous and co-located with the demand. That's called proximity. It's a subject of a book I'm working on for Columbia University Press right now. It'll be out late next year. But I want to challenge and offer you the opportunity to think, what does proximity mean in each of your environments? This will define every industry going forward. Let me give you an example. First, of physical products. Today, we have a global supply chain optimized for scale manufacturing at a distance. The larger our plant, the lower our costs. Not always true, but for the most part. Over the rest of our careers, this model will be ripped apart. This model will be destroyed. Now, note what I'm not saying. I'm not saying there won't be huge plants somewhere in China, Germany, Mexico, the UAE perhaps. Of course, there will still be some large plants where it makes economic sense. But there will also be mid-sized plants closer to demand. There'll be production capabilities in urban areas, near where people actually live, and eventually on your counter at home. Think about a possibility in the future of a 3D printer at home. Think about how hard it is today to buy one matching metal fork. How do we buy one matching metal fork? Well, it's actually quite hard. Someone in Western Australia mines iron ore, they put it on a ship, they send it to Southeast China, they melt it down, they alloy the steel, send it to another plant, they make 12 matching forks, they put them into a box, onto a pallet, slide it onto a ship, across the Indian Ocean, and it shows up here in Sharjah, and I buy 12 matching metal forks. Today, with 3D printing, it is technologically trivial to download a design file, push a button, and print one matching metal fork. Think about the implications of proximity for sustainability. Think about the implications of proximity for waste, eliminating waste. Think about how we can create only what is necessary where and when it is necessary. It changes the model. Now, you probably recognize this is the flag of Bangladesh. You might also know that they've made extraordinary strides to providing energy, power, electricity, to their country over the past 15 years. Today, they can produce more electricity than is needed by the country at large. But even though they can do that, they still have rolling blackouts. They still have places in the country that don't have access to this, or dependable access to this electricity. What happened? Well, they had a bold vision 15 years ago, and I have to give them credit. It was a bold vision. We will build enough power infrastructure for the entire country. And what did they do? Understandably, they built a lot of power plants that look like this. Very large-scale power plants, the old 20th century version of energy. And they can serve the energy needs of the whole country, but it's not working. Why? Well, the solution is, of course, to have proximate energy generation. Not in place of the old model, but in addition to the hybrid solution. So now those people in the country that have solar, rooftop, or in other instantiations, have an alternative to provide more resilience, more evolvability as their power needs evolve. And think about how much easier it is if I have thousands of solar installations and a new, better technology arises, and I decide to replace 1,000 of those with 10x better technology, that's far easier than replacing a traditional electricity generating plant. For that, I'm probably going to wait 10, 20, 30 years before I install the new technology. So it's about thinking about proximity. These rooftop solar installations are an example of proximity, bringing power generation and storage closer and closer to where it's demanded. Now let's move away from products or energy. Let's talk about software. There's a movement in the world called the no-code movement, making software without knowing how to code at all. 2017, my good friend Gary Hoberman, who was the CIO of MetLife, a big life insurance company at the time, left his job to start Uncork, to lead the no-code movement. He couldn't find a single venture capitalist willing to invest, so he self-funded it. A year later, Google and Goldman Sachs had made major investments. By end of last year, they had a Series C round with a $2 billion valuation. They're growing like mad, and this is not just a dream. This year, their revenues will have passed a run rate of over $200 million. This is real business, and guess who their clients are? Insurance companies and banks. They're making software without knowing how to code. Why is this proximity? Well, in the old days of software, if you're a smart business person and you want to create software, you call your IT department and you go through a very long process to eventually get the software that wasn't really what you wanted in the first place, but you sign the form, so there you go. With the no-code movement, you can sit down as a smart business person and design the software you want, and within a matter of days or weeks, it's operating and it's enterprise compliant. That's proximity. As proximity rises, and you'll start to see it more and more in your daily lives, value being produced and provided at the very moment that you have the demand. As this rises, we'll see customer expectations rising dramatically. Because when you experience this kind of service, this kind of efficiency in one part of your life, you expect it in another part of your life. Here's an exciting point. We will, for the first time since the Industrial Revolution, be able to break the trade-off between customization and efficiency. We will be able to break the trade-off between, well, you can have it customized, but it's going to be expensive. Or you can have it low cost, but it's going to have to be standard. You're going to have to make compromises. But when we can wait until we have the actual demand from the actual customer and produce only exactly what they require, then we can break the trade-off between customization and efficiency. And finally, waste declines. So a good friend of mine, Dr. Jeffrey Ling, medical doctor from the U.S. Army, he's retired from that. He spent 6 tours of duty with the Army, and he had a problem. We all have this problem around the world, and that is drug shortages. Generic drug shortages. The kind of thing you can go to the pharmacy and buy easily any day, and we run out of it. Not just in war zones, but at pharmacies and hospitals all over the world. There's a long story behind this, but I'll just give you the punchline. Dr. Ling said, what if I could make the drugs exactly the drugs I need where and when I need them? What he realized was that most pharmaceutical drugs are made of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. So he said, what if I have a piece of equipment that I can type in 300 tablets of ciprofloxacin or 1,000 doses of atropine, and a matter of hours later will come out 1,000 doses of atropine, made to order. Now think about how this transforms the model. This is a different challenge than others were focused on. Others were saying, how do we improve the supply chain in order to solve these drug shortages? He said, forget about the supply chain. We're never going to fix that. Let's come up with an entirely new proximate solution. How do I produce the product right here? Now, a drug like ciprofloxacin has a shelf life. It expires after a while. You have to throw it out and make new every few years. But with Dr. Ling's solution, which, by the way, has already been approved for military use and is going through approval process with the FDA for civilian use, this piece of equipment, in his context, his piece of equipment has essentially carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen in it, waiting for the exact drug you need created wherever, whenever you need it, and it's about this big. Now, remember the shelf life of ciprofloxacin? A few years? What is the shelf life of carbon? Forever. You never have to throw out. You never have to waste because you've waited until the actual demand. So the question I ask to you, to each one of you, the question I'll pose to our panelists as they join me on stage is, which challenges will you aspire to conquer? Thank you very much.